Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. We are so excited to have you to our channel, to our YouTube and our podcast channels to learn about how to create the life that you want. And here we have a very special guest today, and his name is Matt Potratz. So nice to see you and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. I'm excited.
So, yeah, I'm so glad to have you. And let me explain you guys why it's not time to doom scroll to the next video or to the next podcast. Because today we're going to talk about how adversity can be a gift. It isn't just what you think is a punishment. Life is against me. Sometimes adversity can be completely look different in our mindsets because we realize that we are actually resilient and we are growing.
Yes.
And we're gonna talk with Matt about how he went from being a professional sports person to be brain dead, and everyone thought he was gonna be dead, and that was it. And he also received some bad news. Once he recovered, part of his body wasn't working. So how did he go from A to B, and yet he's here today doing a lot of things that he never thought he was going to do? It's the way he responded to adversity because, in the process of fighting back to learn to talk, to walk, he wrote a book. He became, I think, also a pastor, if I remember reading your notes.
Mhm.
And he really turned the tragedy into triumph. So, this would be a great thing for us to learn from because we want to create the life that we want, but we cannot always expect everything to be perfect. Sometimes it's because things are not perfect that we get the life that we need and that we want. So let's start, Matt, by asking you how your life was when you had the accident. I actually do not know what age you were, so you can just talk and we're here listening.
Well, um, I had a pretty good life. People would have thought I had a good life. I looked like I had everything together. I was 27 and a half years old, and I was leading a very successful business career. And then on the side, on the weekends and my days off from work, had been invited to ride snowmobiles at a professional level for film companies that make the extreme backcountry movies, jumping off cliffs, doing stunts, climbing chutes, doing the crazy stuff for the camera to entertain the snowmobilers, or entertain viewers. And so I was very good at what I did, and I rode in seven different motion pictures. I've ridden with the top five guys in the world, and been all over the place riding snowmobiles for the camera. And so I wasn't planning on that ending. I was planning on continuing that. It was going really well. But March 1st, 2009, I went for a film shoot. We were filming a hill climb segment in relative deep snow conditions, and we were aware of the possibility of avalanches that day. We weren't sure what the conditions were exactly, but we did some testing, found out they were somewhat moderate, and so we were very careful what we climbed that day, what we didn't climb. But I chose a mountain that day to climb to for the camera that I guess bit back. It bit back at me, and I set off an avalanche, and the avalanche crushed me to a tree and buried me, and they took 5 hours to rescue me. It was a really intense snowstorm that blew in, and they found a broken neck and femur and ribs and collapsed lung and brain damage. And so I spent a lot of time in the hospital. We'll talk about that a little more if you want to. And just a long journey to get back where I'm at today. So I'll kind of open it back up to you, Franz. Do you have any questions about specifically the hospital? Or you want me to just go into the story right there as well?
Hmm. Let's talk a little bit about the hospital because we as humans have a tendency to believe that unless our health is perfect and we recover very quickly, God is against us. He doesn't love us. Why did this happen to me? So maybe explaining because you went through a lot of pain, and there is something here about the pain that you mentioned. So I thought it was important to mention it now.
Well, um, I was definitely a Christian before the Avalanche happened. I called myself a Christian anyway. I called myself a church goer and everything, but I really was not following God. I was following Matt and living my own dream and live my own desires and build my own kingdom. And so I think God just really woke me up in the sense of He made Himself very real to me. When God needs to take you as far down as He has to to get your attention so he can rebuild you, then let it happen because I wouldn't I would still wouldn't trade it even if I could, just because it took that much to wake me up, took that much to get my attention, but it took that much to bring me back to a vibrant relationship with God, and so I wouldn't trade that for anything now. It's priceless. In fact, I would say that you don't know God is all you need until God is all you have. And so I went to the bottom. In fact, right on the helipad, when the helicopter landed at the hospital, I died on the helipad. I stopped breathing. I was out. They resuscitated me, got me breathing again, and pushed me to the ER to discover that it was bad. Like I said, a broken neck and femur and ribs and collapsed lung and brain damage. I had hematomas on both sides of my brain and some blood clots and blood pooling and all kinds of really serious issues. In fact, my family was told we're not yet going to treat the money or spend the money to treat Matt's injuries because it doesn't appear he's going to survive the night. But of course, by the grace of God, I survived. But the next day would hold reality check. It was time to see is there really any hope here? Because I was essentially living on assistance of machine. I had no response to stimuli or no response to input. And so they wanted to see, okay, is there any life in this body, right? And so they do what's called painful stimuli. Because when you're even when you're in a comatose state like I was in a comatose state, your body should respond in some way to pain. Just I'm showing to show some indication you're aware of the pain they're inflicting on you. So they began to poke me and prod me and shake me and like dig under my fingernails and do things that would cause significant pain. And I showed no awareness whatsoever. I was lifeless on the table. So the doctor reported to my family. He said, it doesn't look good here. But he said, I'm going to try one last thing. He said, I'm going to hook a brain scan him out. With the brain scan in place, I'm going to again inflict pain on him. And then he said, look, if he doesn't respond to the brain, if the brain scan doesn't respond, we're in trouble. He said, if there's any hope here at all, his brain has to respond to our input. And so they did so. They hooked the brain scan up and began to again poke me and prod me and shake me. And they got nothing. The brain didn't show any indication whatsoever. And so the last thing they did to confirm it, and this would definitely cause pain, he picked up my left leg, my shattered femur, and my broken leg, not been fully treated yet, picked it up off the table a little ways, let it free fall, dropped it, whack. I mean, I think I don't got to explain that that would cause extreme pain. The brain scan showed nothing to get excited about. So he just marched out with confidence. So my family said, I'm sorry, guys. He said, short of a miracle, Matt will not be with us anymore. He said, he's alive technically, right? Because the machine's breathing for him, so his heart's beating. But really, outside of that, as I can tell, Matt is brain dead. So if I unplug the cord, he's gone. Of course, my family just sunk back in shock, thinking, "Oh my goodness! I mean, this is it. We're saying goodbye." But my dad's a man of faith too, and he has incredible resilience and resolve, and he stood strong. He said, "I don't know why, but I can't do this yet. I want a second opinion." And so reluctantly, the doctor agreed to get a second opinion. But in that time frame, my dad gathered some friends from the waiting area, and they also sent phone calls, text, emails, every communication source across the nation and even across the world saying, pray. My mom's family happened to be world missionaries, and so they had teams overseas praying and seeking God's face for my mercy, for my life. I was dead. And so in that time frame, my dad goes down with a group and lays hands, maybe begins praying for me and just ask God to bring me back and give their son back, right? And about an hour and a half passed, and they started to kind of accept, okay, well, we probably better just say goodbye to Matt. This might be it. And so they kind of started to prepare themselves for that. But then a good friend of mine, John Heston, is also a believer, who's in the room, and he spoke up to say, guys, I don't know why, but I have this like weird feeling, like a deep feeling, like Matt knows we're here, like he knows we're in the room. Why don't we see what happens if we try again and respond? Let's give it a shot if we try. They said, okay, sure, why not? So John got right in my face and yelled loud, Matt, it's John. If you can hear me, raise your right leg. And I didn't raise my leg, but to their shock, I clearly moved my leg. I tried to move my leg, and they're like, he moved it, guys, he moved it. I know he did it. It moved. And so they played it on a little bit more, got me to lightly squeeze a hand. Of course, they rushed from him to get the doctor to tell him what had happened. He came back in the room thinking they were wasting his time because he had no response from my brain an hour and a half earlier. And but then he stepped up to the bed and they said, "Watch this," and he got up there and squeezed my hand, and I squeezed his hand, and he's just like, "Oh my goodness," he's had a response, and he got me to he tried to get me to open my eyes, but I couldn't open my eyes, but I was able to flutter my eyelids, and so he clearly had some response from me, and so he was in shock, thinking I'm like, he had nothing for my brain an hour earlier, and so he left the room though to eventually meet my family, and he said, "Look, I know it's exciting. I know there's some signs of life here. I know there's hope here, but look, it's my job as his doctor to make sure you understand something that Matt is still in a comatose state." He said, on top of that, looking at the scans of his body and his brain, his spine, everything else, if he does come out of this coma, when he does, there's a very good chance he'll never walk again. He will not be the same person. And on top of that, the brain damage, there's hematomas on both sides of his brain. He will not mentally be the same person he used to know. And so he said, I'm not trying to be, naysayer here, but I just have to prepare you for that reality. And my family hung on for a long time, just not accepting that prognosis and just believing and praying and seeking God's face. And in fact, they sat by my bed and prayed and talked to my ear and but a lot of time passed. About 10 days into the coma, 10 days in my coma, something very special happened that will never be forgotten in my lifetime or theirs. I'm a father to seven kiddos now, but at that point I had three kiddos of my own, three boys. And those three boys were very young at that time, and they'd not been allowed to see their dad yet, because as you can imagine, seeing daddy hooked to tubes and hoses and wires, all the equipment hooked to him would have been very scary, right? At that young age. But they were told daddy got hurt real bad and just needs to sleep for a while. But thinking I was sleeping, they were told, we can pick up the phone though. We'll call your daddy. We'll put the cell phone to his ear. You guys can talk to your daddy while he sleeps and see if you can hear you talk to him. And they thought about that for a minute. And my youngest, or my oldest boy, Connor, was about five at that time. He said, no, no, we really want to call daddy and talk to him. And their mom was kind of like, well, why? He said, because we want to call and sing to him. Here's why. But before the Avalanche, I was a musician. I used to play guitar. I can't play guitar now because my left arm is completely paralyzed. It's totally dead. From the shoulder down, it's completely dead, so I can't play guitar now. I still play drums pretty well with one arm, but I can't play guitar. I used to play all the time with my kids, and they would sing songs and dance and stuff. And so Connor says we want to sing, and so one of our favorite songs to sing together was "You Never Let Go" by Matt Redman. And so his mom says, "What song do you want to sing?" He said, "I want to sing our favorite song, You Never Let Go." So my boys called me on the phone. They put a cell phone in my ear and they sang the chorus of the song by Matt Redman, "You Never Let Go," which says, "Oh no, you never let go through the calm and through the storm. Oh no, you never let go in every high and every low. Oh no, you never let go. Lord, you never let go of me." And so they sang the chorus of that song best they could at that young age. And here's the incredible part. I really truly believe a miracle happened in that song because I have no memory of this, zero memory, but they recorded the fact that at that moment I raised my eyebrows and I tried to smile. I obviously could hear my boys singing. And from that point forward, I began to show more response to stimuli, I began to show more response to input and commands and show more signs of life. But even so, I remained that way for a long time. I was in a coma for that. It wasn't until day 41 they said my brain was officially out of comatose state. And when I came out of the coma, that was the doctor was right to some degree. I was not the same person. I was messed up bad. In fact, initially they gave me a pen and asked me to write my name, and I couldn't write my name. I couldn't write the alphabet. I couldn't just write scribbly lines. And then they began to realize that my cognitive ability was that of a child, and my speech was very slurred, and I couldn't recognize a lot of people in the room, and I was confused a lot, and so. And then I would at the very end there, I would come out of the coma for a little bit and then kind of drift back in and come out and drift back in but then once I got out and got going again, they realized this is gonna be a long battle. I had to get out of bed into a wheelchair eventually and begin to be pushed around because I could not walk. And then I got to a point that I could do some physical therapy a little bit, and then I did occupational therapy, speech therapy, cognitive therapy every day. I had a long battle to go, and I knew that, and I could just sense that, and I was like, "Oh my goodness!" And I had a lot of encouragement around me, a lot of support around me. I could never do it by myself without God the Father and my own father and my parents. My mother was incredible. My mom quit her job and moved to the Boise where I was in the hospital at, and stayed there for 66 days with me because I was hospitalized like that in rehab for 88 straight days. I don't think I got to explain to you that being hospitalized for 88 days is like being in a prison because you literally can't leave. You're stuck there, right? And you're being fed meals every day and you're being taken care of every day. You can't do anything for yourself, and so it's a long battle. But during that time, I believe God was doing something in my heart and stirring something in me and showing me Himself, and I began to just see God in a whole new light, even in the midst of turmoil. God didn't make the avalanche happen. It's not God's fault. God didn't do it to me. I did it to me. God allowed it to happen, but God did it for me, not to me, because He wanted to bring me back to a relation with Him and also give me a story to tell that would just bring many people to know Him. And so I went home kind of a new man, but I was still in a lot of process of change, and God was still working on me. And but I went home with the problem is I went home with the worst injury of all of them. The worst than breaking my neck was that in my paralyzed hand, my hand and arm, my I can't use it, can't feel it, can't move it, right? Can't do anything with it. But inside the hand and deep inside the hand and arm had this unbelievable nerve pain, like burning, intense nerve pain. It's called phantom nerve pain. Your spinal cord, the place of injury, is sending my brain a false signal that says my hand hurts. And so if your brain thinks it burns all day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it's intense. You can't massage it, you can't reposition it, you can't move it because it's not coming from your extremity, right? It's coming from my brain and my spinal cord. And so I fought that, and I was heavily medicated in the beginning. When I came home, I was on 8 hydrocodone, a few Lyrica, and a few OxyContin all in one day, just to be able to tolerate it. And I was pretty strong-willed. I cut that back as far as I could to like 6 hydros and kick the oxy, things like that. But all they could tell me for a remedy was long-term medication. They said it's a complex injury. We don't know a lot about it yet. It's a All we can do is just get you on a regimen of long-term medication. But I was on medication, and medication doesn't do as much for phantom pain because the source is false, right? And so it was intense, didn't really stop. Even on medication, even drugged out of my mind, I was still in unbelievable nerve pain. And so one time, so a lot of times in the middle of the night, I wake up these weird pulsations, like it would like pulsate down, burn, hot, like then pull back, then pulsate and burn, pull back, like weird pulsations. And I would wake up sometimes and cry until my pillowcase was wet. It was so much pain. My pillowcase would be damp from the tears. And one time I woke up about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I had these deep, intense burning pains again. And all I could hear was the doctor's voice saying, long-term medication, long-term medication. And I said, forget it. I'm freaking done. I'm done. I'm not going to be like this for life. I'm done. I fought a good fight, but I can fight no more. And I already thought about how I would do it. And I made a firm decision that night to commit suicide, take my life. I got my snowmobile gear bag out of the closet and began to piece on all my riding gear and pull it into place. My plan was to gear up head to toe, all my riding gear. I was driving some at this point, so I was going to drive down the nearby tall bridge over Snake River. I was going to take the helmet from the Avalanche, slide the helmet back on my head from the Avalanche, and jump off. My thought was, I yelled at God and said, "You didn't get the job done right the first time. I'm going to gear up and finish this. I want to die in my gear." And I was angry at God. I was angry at the situation, and then I was done. And I sat down on my bed, began to pull my jersey in place, and right then God knew exactly what stopped me, not dead, but alive in my tracks. He brought back a thought right then of my middle son Ethan, and my middle son Ethan and I were always been very close, but Ethan was very young then, and now he's 18 today, but but he loves dogs, still does. He did then. Didn't have his own dog back then. He had his grandparents' dog Sadie was like his dog. Took care of Sadie and loved her and bathed her and fed her and just loved Sadie. She was a black lab and beautiful dog. And recently, before the suicide, thought Sadie had died of old age. And Ethan was just completely crushed. I was like, my doggy's gone, Daddy. She's gone. I can't, he's not going to come back. She was just crushed. And I found him like by himself crying like 5 days after the dog had died, by himself in his bedroom crying. I went in there and nudged up to him and said, Buddy, what's wrong? He said, Daddy, my doggy's gone. She's not going to come back. And I tried to encourage him. I said, Buddy, it's okay. I think she's in heaven. I think you're going to get to see her again someday. And what he had said at that moment, and the thought that came back in the middle of my suicide was Ethan had said, But Daddy, I don't want her to be in heaven. I want her to be here with me. And that thought hit me with twice the force of Avalanche. In fact, I'm going to make a bold statement because I believe it's true. I know it's true. And I'm not, initially I was afraid to say it, but I'm not afraid to say it now. I believe it's the only time in my life I've ever heard the audible voice of God. I heard the audible voice that night, still calm, powerful voice, simply said, Matt, his doggy's gone. He's crushed. What happens if his daddy's gone? And I just fell back in the bed, began to just gush tears, weep tears. And I erased that plan on the drawing board. I mean, how selfish would that be to relieve myself of my pain, but leave my boys with a lifetime pain missing their daddy? And so I'm so glad I didn't do that because I live a life today incredible. Their mom and I were unfortunately divorced when the avalanche happened, but now I'm remarried today, and I've got more kids from the mix of that, and my boys and I get along great, and we're still very close, and they're young adults now, and I later, about a year later, I found a doctor in Chicago that could do a spinal cord surgery to help alleviate that pain to some degree. It's probably 25% of what it once was. I take nothing narcotic for it anymore. I'm not drugged out of my mind. I feel great, feel normal. And thank God I didn't take my life that night. Thank God he knew how to get me to stop, you know? So obviously, I only share that just so you guys know how extreme the adversity has been. It has been to the extreme, um, about as far as you can go without losing your life, right? And so I'm not bragging myself. I'm not saying, hi, woe is me or nothing like that. I'm just saying that God is using this story to reveal himself to me and reveal himself to others through my story. And so, um, I guess just trust him. Trust him that even in the bad, he's in all things. You know, the Bible even says the all things work together for good for those that love the Lord and are called according to his purpose, right? And there's no
Mhm.
doubt that they're working together because even if I could get my left arm back, my athletic ability back, and my stamina back and all that stuff back, and I still have a lot of residual pain from my neck, everything else, I wouldn't take all that back. I don't want to be the old professional athlete, Matt. I want to be this Matt. I want to be
Mhm.
who God's created me to be today. And so I wouldn't take it back if I could.
Well, thank you. There is a lot of pain that you went through emotionally as well, because the physical pain will crush you eventually until you
Yeah,
are to the edge and say, That's it, I'm done with this, I'm going. And then we realize, wow, we're leaving people in pain on earth. So you
right.
found a deeper relationship to God, with God, and you reacted to your pain then in a different way. So I'm going to respond using my faith and say, okay, I'm going to go through this and I'm going to make it. And I'm glad you have only 25% of the horrible pain. I personally think I
Yeah.
have a very low threshold for my pain. And I'm like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, I could not do it. But yet we find that we are stronger when we are challenged. So as we go to the end of the episode, what message would you give to people who in this moment are feeling crushed in pain due to emotional, physical, relationship, or job, or whatever is making them suffer so much they think, that's it, I'm done. So, what would you suggest that they do to maybe using faith in God to react in a different way to their crisis, because
Mhm.
that's the whole thing, looking at this adversity as a tool. What is the mindset? Because this
Mhm.
podcast is about the mindset. So you have some steps or some things that you've done through the years.
Mhm.
What would you want to share with us?
I would say that first of all, is just understanding to not get mad at God, to not curse God, and not say why God, and instead of saying why God, why me, why does this have to happen, just say, okay, what now? What now? Stop saying why me, and say, what now? Because God is not stupid. God is sovereign, and God knows what's best for you, and God has a plan and everything. And so, if you're going through something hard, understand that God, the character of God is in the Bible and everything you read about him, everything you know about him, has never been somebody who does something to you. He does things for you because that's just how he is. He's a good father. He's a good God. That's who he is. Goodness is part of his character. And so even in the bad, there's goodness there somewhere because God will show you a whole new life if you let him show it to you. And the other thing was I would say that that gets people stuck in the rut a lot of times is I think all of us are guilty of this at some point in life. We focus on things we cannot change. Because think about it, guys. I can't change the fact my left arm is paralyzed. I can't change my neck's kind of bent. I'm in a lot of pain. I can't run. I can't be athletic. I can't do the things I once did. I still walk really well now. I still live life, but there's so many things I can't do, right? But I can't change that. What I can change is what I do with it. I can't really change what's happened to me. And so I focus on things only that I can change. And then I can take all the limited amount of energy I have, because every human being has a limited amount of energy, right? A limited amount of hours in a day. Take those things, harness those things, channel those things, and focus it only on things you can change to impact the kingdom of heaven and do life for God. And so just know that God loves you. Don't believe that God hates you. Don't believe that God's trying to punish you. Don't believe that God despises you. Don't let the devil tell you those things because he will. Those things are not true about God, never have been, never will be. God does things for you, not to you.
Mm. That's a very good message to understand. It's just really the mindset. This is
Yeah,
not going against me. This is going to make me grow because
right.
we learn by having to fight something. It's only, we always say, if you want to have muscles, you need to lift something that is difficult to lift.
Yep,
If it's
100%.
too easy, you won't get muscle. But if it's
Yep.
a little hard, and after two or three, you're like, oh, this is so bad. That's what you need because the muscle fibers will tear, excuse me
Mhm.
for the lack of
Yep.
scientific words here, but the fiber and the cells will be tearing a little bit and they will be a
Mhm.
little bit painful and they will grow more muscle. And then if you
Yep.
keep adding to the weight every week a little bit more, eventually you have big muscles. And that I think is a big message for those who think that having a pampered life is happiness and is the solution, or giving our children a pampered life is happiness and is a solution, because it's not, because we're not
Right.
becoming strong. And you know what, your message reminds me so much of a metaphor that come from gardening, because when you are growing your plant, at least when I was in England, you grow your plants, you grow them from seed, very careful, all nice in a warm comfortable environment, right? And
Hmm.
then when they're a little bit stronger but very soft. If you keep them indoors, they're never gonna become strong. But if you start putting them outside, when you get a little bit fresher air and the wind and the
Yep.
occasional
Yep.
bird, then they start becoming stronger. And in the end, when they're ready, you put them outside and they can withstand the wind. And that's how we are as humans, isn't it?
Mhm. Yeah,
It's
100%.
we need the stretch, we need that push to become better, to change. And sometimes God gives us this something that we didn't think was going to happen, that we lose our independence or our health, or the husband or wife, we lose a child. There are terrible things, and knowing that He's there with us, I think that makes the whole difference there. So it's not against us,
Yep.
He's
No.
working with us and
Right.
for us. So that's it's a great thing for most people. They will think, now, look at all the wars, look at all the disasters. God
Hmm.
is not there. Like the wars are not caused by God.
Hmm. Right.
We cause the
Right.
war,
Right.
you
He
know.
lets them happen, but he lets them happen because
Yeah,
we have free will.
we have.
We always have had free
Yeah,
will. And I think God delights in that free will. He wants us to be free. So,
yeah,
but he wants us to use that free will to serve him, not to serve ourselves. And so
exactly.
that's been the biggest problem in the
And
world right
that's the
now,
thing
honestly.
also. You
Yeah.
had a wonderful life. You're doing the sport that you love, you're doing
Yeah.
normal profession, nothing sinful or bad, but maybe the focus had to change.
Hmm.
And God said, okay, you've done that. Now let's focus on something else,
Yeah.
your internal growth. And he decided, that, are you doing it? Are you doing it? You were like, no, I'm doing so well in this job. Could have been any job, agricultural, a lawyer, could be any job. But sometimes it's important to realize there is more in life than just the job you're doing.
Yep.
And God wants us to grow there a little bit more. And it was so painful. I would want to be in your position to go through all these
Mhm.
88 days in hospital. And oh my gosh, that's a terrible thing. But you come out on the other side and now you're changing people's life. And
Yeah.
before we close, you want to share how does it feel to share this story and everything with other people?
I'd say that it brings me joy nothing else ever has, honestly. Just because I see it in people's eyes, I see tears shed, and I see that people are being touched by it because it's a real life story that people can relate to. It's not just some thought or some philosophical thing out there. It's actually a real life story. And one of the best experiences I've ever had in my lifetime is I was speaking inside a big state prison down in Boise, Idaho, and had a chapel completely full of men in tattoos and beat up bodies and they're prisoners, right? They're criminals. They've done wrong things, and there's some pretty tough guys there, right? But those tough guys in that environment, I shared my story and shared what God did for me and shared who God is. And at the end, I give an invitation for them to come down front to the altar and accept Christ and greet or recommit their life to Christ. And 45 guys got out of their seat in front of their tough guy peers. They had to be vulnerable to be in front of their tough guy peers. They marched down front and they prayed that prayer out loud with me to give their lives to Christ. And I was just like, Holy Spirit was strong, and I was shedding, everyone was shedding tears, and it was powerful, right? And I never got to experience anything of that magnitude before adversity. So adversity really is a gift. If you respond properly to it, it's a gift. If you don't, it's going to dig you a hole you can't get out of. And so you've got to look at adversity, what it can do for you, not to you, and how it can grow you, not destroy you. And just know that God has joy on the backside. I mean, that joy,
Mm,
I'll say one last thing, joy is not happiness, right? It's not being giddy and happy all day. Joy is a deep internal assurance that God's got me no matter what I go through. It's this deep internal peace that nothing else can give you. That's biblical, godly joy that you just walk around with this deep internal peace. And so I've had that today, and I couldn't have found it any other way.
yeah. It is different maybe from a dopamine rush that we get if I have some
Oh man,
chocolate or if I
yeah,
kiss a new guy for the first time when I'm
yeah,
18
yeah,
or when I win a
yeah.
trophy. That's all wonderful, but that's a momentary thing. And
Right,
then the
right.
deepest peace and joy is a different thing. So that's a great point. Well, thank you so much, Matt, for coming to my show. That was a great learning experience for me.
Yeah, I'm glad I came. I'm glad you had me. Thanks for putting me on the show. So thank you.
Yeah, it will be great to hear what you guys think about it. Maybe you want to share your story. Maybe you want to check out the links that I'm gonna put in the video and
Yeah, if you want to
see.
read my book, I mean, it's on the
Yeah,
links you're
what
going
was
to
the
share.
title
Yeah,
of the book again? Or I'm gonna write
it's
it. What?
called Two Hands because I live without two hands. Two hands, a life radically changed in 12 seconds.
There we go. So we're gonna
Yeah.
put a link to everything so you can go and check out what's going on with Matt Potratz today and how can the message that he has help you to change your life. So I want to thank you all for being here. Maybe remember to subscribe and click like, share this episode so that the channel can be visible to more people and then the message of Matt can also reach more people. So thank you very much. Thank you, Matt. See you all next week. Bye.
Awesome. Thank you.